White Karen had always prided herself on knowing what was best for her community. In the suburban sprawl of Maple Grove, where the manicured lawns and tidy houses were a testament to local values, she played the role of the self-appointed guardian of order and decency. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Karen's routine, a daily circuit of warning calls, careful observations, and the occasional lecture to neighbors whose actions threatened the sanctity of her perfect block. Yet none had ever imagined that her uncompromising moral code would be challenged by a twist of fate so ironic that it threatened to upend everything she held dear. It was a hot and sticky afternoon in the middle of summer when all the tensions of a long, simmering day finally reached a boiling point. The neighborhood pool was a popular retreat, a crystalline oasis that provided a momentary escape from relentless heat. Typically, the pool was filled with families and friends, laughter echoing against the tiled walls as children splashed around in unself-conscious joy. However, on this particular day, the mood was anything but festive. The atmosphere was charged, electric with the undercurrent of an impending confrontation. In one corner of the pool area, a woman with an assertive stance was preparing to immerse herself in what she considered a haven. Her name was Simone, and she had moved to Maple Grove seeking the calm that she could never find elsewhere. With her smooth ebony skin and eyes that shone with quiet dignity, Simone was a person who had weathered many storms in her life. She knew all too well the sting of judgment from those who dismissed her simply because she was different. Arriving late that afternoon, she carried with her a serene determination to enjoy the recreation time that the pool promised, oblivious to the whispers and disapproving glances that trailed in her wake. Karen, ever watchful, had already spied Simone as soon as she arrived. The sight of the black woman in her pool chair, wearing a colorful swimsuit and exuding an air of relaxed confidence, ignited a spark of indignation in Karen's heart. In Karen's eyes, the pool was her dominion, a place where only those who conformed to her imagined image of perfection were welcome. She could not abide by the notion of another person, especially someone from a different background, encroaching on what she believed was her space. In a fury that belied her typically controlled exterior, Karen marched purposefully toward Simone, her footsteps loud and unwavering. Simone, feeling content yet mindful of those around her, raised her eyes at the approaching figure. There was a brief pause as she took in Karen's stern expression and crisp, oversized sunglasses that seemed to shield a prejudice hidden behind a veneer of civility. Before Simone could offer any greeting, Karen's voice rang out in a tone that brooked no argument. "You shouldn't be here," Karen declared, her tone dripping with condescension. "This is a private facility for people who appreciate proper behavior." Simone's eyes flickered with a mixture of surprise and suppressed anger. "Excuse me," she replied coolly, her tone measured as she tried to maintain a sense of composure. The murmurs of bystanders grew louder as the standoff captured everyone's attention. Karen's cheeks reddened at the sight of Simone's calm yet challenging response, and back and forth they exchanged terse words while the clear water of the pool sparkled in the late afternoon light. Karen persisted, her words laced with an air of entitlement. "You need to leave this pool at once. It's obvious that you don't belong here. I have rights, you see, to ensure that everything in this community meets my standards." Simone, unaccustomed to having to justify her very presence, responded in a tone that left no doubt that she was not one to be bullied. "This pool is open to anyone who follows the established rules. I have every right to be here," she said evenly. What neither woman realized was that fate had an uncanny sense of irony, and the true power in this encounter was about to reveal itself in an unexpected manner. As the commotion escalated, a dark sedan pulled up to the edge of the pool area. Heads turned as a stern figure emerged from the vehicle. Clad in a crisp uniform and a commanding presence that demanded respect, Chief Marlon Evans stepped forward. Chief Evans, who had earned his reputation as a no-nonsense leader and fair arbitrator in the local police department, was known throughout Maple Grove for his unwavering dedication to justice. His deep-set eyes missed nothing, and on this day, he promptly assessed the situation unfolding before him. Karen, momentarily distracted by the arrival of the chief, was unprepared for the impact of his presence on what she presumed was her turf. Chief Evans calmly strolled toward the pair, his step deliberate, his expression revealing nothing of the judgment that weighed on both sides. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked in a deep voice that brooked no nonsense. Karen, feeling both intimidated and furious at being singled out in what she considered her domain, stammered an explanation that spoke of community standards and the inappropriate nature of Simone's presence. She spoke quickly, her words coming out in a rush, each sentence laced with the presumption that her authority was absolute. Simone's presence in the face of Chief Evans was unflinching. "Chief Evans," she said, her voice steady, "I'm here to use a community facility just like everybody else. I've followed every rule posted here and paid the required fee." Chief Evans raised his hand, maintaining silence until each person had told their side of the story. His authoritative presence gave both women pause, but Karen was already losing her composure as she realized for the first time that her demands might not be as absolute as she had assumed. Chief Evans listened carefully to Karen's tirade about exclusivity, propriety, and neighborhood standards. His dark eyes then fell on Simone, who remained calm and poised, virtually daring him to reject her rightful claim to the pool. "I appreciate your passion for ensuring order," Chief Evans began, his voice calm yet carrying an unmistakable firmness. "However, community spaces are for all residents, regardless of who they are. The rules of this facility apply equally to everyone." Karen's protest began to falter, replaced by a simmering anger that threatened to boil over. The irony was becoming clearer to everyone present. Here stood the self-appointed enforcer of community values and purity, asked to yield by the very authority that protected every citizen's rights. The exchange that followed was a masterclass in the collision of prejudices and entrenched beliefs. Karen, determined to salvage her authority, tried to cite obscure regulations and local guidelines she had apparently memorized. But every argument she presented was met with calm rebuttals by Chief Evans, who emphasized fairness and equality. Simone, ever the epitome of grace in the face of injustice, interjected gently, explaining how she had followed every rule and that her presence was not a violation of any regulation. The words hung in the heavy air as the surrounding crowd watched in a mixture of relief and outrage. For some, it was a moment of vindication; for others, it was a subtle yet audible reminder that bias and entitlement should never go unchallenged. Even as Karen's insistence grew more desperate, Chief Evans maintained his balanced tone. "I'm aware of your concerns, ma'am," he said to Karen, his gaze steady but unyielding, "but our community is diverse and evolving. We must embrace everyone without exception." His words echoed across the poolside, stirring a murmur among the onlookers and leaving Karen's face a mask of incredulity and indignation. The dynamic had shifted remarkably. What began as a routine dispute had transformed into a larger discussion about the values the community held dear. Even the pool water, shimmering under the setting sun, seemed to reflect the surreal nature of the encounter, embodying the complexity of an issue that ran deep and wide. Karen's shock slowly transformed into defiance. Feeling that her authority was being undermined not only by Simone's presence but also by the very institution that was supposed to protect her interests, she lashed out verbally. "You can't be serious," she snapped. "I mean, who does she think she is? This isn't some city park, it's a community pool that I look after." The intensity of her tone betrayed the fragile ego of someone who believed that her personal power was equivalent to absolute law. Chief Evans replied with a measured calm, "Community pools are for shared enjoyment and access. It's not about one person making decisions for everyone, but about understanding that our differences are a strength, not a liability." Each word was weighed with the experience of having seen too many unnecessary conflicts, the kind that only led to more division. The confrontation could have ended there had it not been for an unexpected twist. As Chief Evans spoke with a quiet authority that resonated with the very souls of the listeners, a familiar figure emerged from the side of the pool. It was Officer Tanya Maxwell, a respected member of the department known for her fairness and dedication to upholding the law with compassion. Tanya glided into the scene with the air of someone who had seen enough to know that even the smallest spark could trigger a large blaze. "Chief Evans, I have a report of a disturbance from the east side," Tanya said softly as she glanced at Karen, whose eyes now flickered with a mix of fear and indignation. Before anyone could react further, a sudden shift in the atmosphere took hold. It was as if the very air trembled with the knowledge that the roles of authority were not as clear-cut as Karen had always believed. Officer Maxwell's voice, gentle yet firm, addressed Karen with an unexpected clarity. "I suggest you step aside and reconsider the tone of this conversation." Her words, calm but resonant with the weight of the law, sent ripples through the gathering. Karen, caught off guard by both the support for Simone and the collective shift in perception, could only stutter a barely intelligible response. To someone watching from afar, it might have appeared that history itself had intervened to correct a mistake before it could fester any further. While Karen's eyes darted around in search of an escape route for her pride, Chief Evans continued, "This dispute is now a matter of public record, and all parties must adhere to the regulations set forth by our local government." The crowd exhaled a collective sigh of relief, while Karen's confidence waned beneath the steady, unyielding pressure of accountability. In a twist of fate that underscored the irony of her own self-inflicted isolation, Karen found herself facing not only the unwavering authority of Chief Evans but also the solidarity of a community that was larger and more diverse than she had ever acknowledged. In the hours that followed, the confrontation slowly subsided. The pool resumed its usual rhythm as families and friends returned to their activities. Yet the memory of the confrontation lingered like a stubborn impression in the minds of those who had witnessed it. Karen retreated to her home, her mind a maelstrom of wounded pride, bitter resentment, and a creeping realization that her world was not as controllable as she had once assumed. In quiet moments over the next few days, Karen found herself reflecting on the incident with a mixture of anger and reluctant introspection. Perhaps it was not so much that Simone had done anything wrong, but that Karen had allowed her own biases to govern her actions. The irony was not lost on her, even if she would never admit it aloud. For Simone, the confrontation with Karen became a turning point, a moment that redefined how she saw herself in a community that had often failed to see her as fully human. In the days that followed, Simone reached out to neighbors who had expressed sympathy, joining community meetings and engaging with groups that advocated for fairness, equality, and justice. Through these interactions, Simone discovered that while prejudice could run deep, there were many in Maple Grove who shared her vision of a community united by respect and mutual support. This slowly blossomed into a movement that sought to redefine what it meant to be a resident of Maple Grove, a movement that championed inclusivity and celebrated differences rather than hiding behind them. Chief Evans' intervention in the poolside altercation gave him new insights into the underlying tension simmering in his community. On the job for many years, he had become an expert mediator of disputes, but the events of that day illuminated aspects of social bias that demanded more than just the enforcement of laws. They required active listening and understanding. In subsequent weeks, Chief Evans spearheaded community outreach programs designed not only to maintain order but to bridge the gaps between different groups. He organized workshops, cultural events, and neighborhood forums that encouraged open dialogue and fostered trust between law enforcement and the citizens they served. These initiatives, though met at first with skepticism and occasional resistance, slowly began to soften the hardened attitudes that had long reigned in certain corners of Maple Grove. As word of Chief Evans' efforts spread, more residents began to engage in conversations about diversity and inclusion. At local town hall meetings that were once mere ceremonial gatherings, passionate debates about heritage, culture, and identity now took center stage. Many residents credited Chief Evans with providing a platform that allowed them to express their concerns and share their personal experiences, transforming a previously stagnant community into a vibrant forum of ideas and hopes. It was during one such meeting that a particularly poignant anecdote was shared, a story of a former resident who had left Maple Grove years ago because of the narrow-mindedness of some neighbors. That testimony resonated with many, serving as a call to action for those who believed that healing could only start with confronting the painful truths of the past. For Karen, these community events were a painful reminder of the confrontation that had shaken her sense of superiority. In private moments, she found herself haunted by flashes of memory, the cool yet defiant tone in Simone's voice, the calm authority in Chief Evans' eyes, and the resolute strength of Officer Maxwell's gaze. Over time, these memories began to chip away at the facade of perfection that she had built around herself. Although she continued to attend neighborhood meetings, her contributions were now measured, and even if her words still bore a tinge of the old prejudices, it was clear that something within her had shifted. A part of Karen's being, long buried under layers of entitlement and fear, began to wonder if perhaps her passion for order had blinded her to the beauty of diversity and the richness of a community that thrived on differences rather than uniformity. Simone, ever gracious in both victory and loss, extended a hand of friendship toward those who sought a new beginning. The transformation was not immediate, change rarely is, but a subtle metamorphosis took place within Maple Grove as residents slowly began to understand that the true strength of a community lay in its unity rather than its conformity. Conversations that once bordered on confrontation transformed into discussions about shared experiences, dreams for the future, and the collective responsibility of building a community that was as welcoming as it was diverse. In this evolving narrative, even those who had once been staunch opponents of change were given the opportunity to learn and grow. In the midst of these ripples of change, Chief Evans continued his service with an unyielding commitment to fairness. Yet now, on every patrol, he carried with him the quiet hope that every encounter, no matter how small, could be an opportunity for healing. His interactions with residents grew warmer as he became more than just an enforcer of rules. He became a symbol of the bridge between old prejudices and a new dawn of unity. As the seasons changed in Maple Grove, the events of that fateful summer day became a touchstone for community members, a reminder that even the most deeply rooted biases could be uprooted when confronted with courage and compassion. Months later, at the annual Maple Grove Festival, a celebration that had long been synonymous with parades, potlucks, and traditions, Karen found herself in a place she never imagined, seated next to Simone at a community table. The setting sun cast a gentle glow on the gathering, and for a moment, as the music swirled around them, there was a silence that spoke of reconciliation and shared dreams. The conversation that unfolded was measured at first, cautious exchanges that slowly gave way to genuine curiosity. Karen, who had once been the mouthpiece of exclusion, began to ask questions about Simone's heritage, her experiences, and the journey that had led her to Maple Grove. In return, Simone shared insights not just about herself but about the vibrant tapestry of cultures that enriched every community. Their dialogue, observed by those around them, became a microcosm of what Maple Grove was slowly but surely becoming, a place where the old and the new could coexist, where differences were celebrated rather than condemned. As the festivities wound down and the crowd dispersed into the starry night, those who had witnessed the transformation found their hearts lighter than before. The echoes of a once divisive confrontation had receded into a memory that no longer fueled anger but prompted introspection and hope. For many, the image of Chief Evans standing in the middle of a gathering of neighbors from every walk of life was a powerful symbol of the fact that true community was built upon the bedrock of fairness and mutual respect. Even the very air of Maple Grove, cooler now as summer gave way to autumn, seemed to carry the subtle perfume of change and possibility. In the years that followed, the legacy of that one turbulent day was woven into the fabric of Maple Grove's history. The pool, which had once been the stage for conflict, became a cherished communal asset, a space where summer laughter was not marked by division but by the joyful unity of diverse families splashing and playing together. Karen, whose journey had been marred by her initial refusal to see beyond her own narrow perspective, eventually came to understand that the true strength of a community lay not in segregation but in the celebration of differences. While the scars of past prejudices took time to heal, the transformation was undeniable, a civic renewal born of confrontation, courage, and above all, the willingness to listen and learn. Each new encounter offered a reminder that reconciliation sometimes begins with a single step, a conversation, an apology, or even an unexpected friendship formed over shared experiences. For Chief Evans, Officer Maxwell, Simone, and even Karen, that step was taken that fateful day by the pool, where high tempers and harsh words were eventually replaced by dialogue, understanding, and unity. The community learned that every individual had a story worth hearing, every voice deserved to be heard, and every life had the potential to contribute to the vibrant mosaic of Maple Grove. In a final twist that few could have foreseen, the annual community festival was renamed the Unity Celebration as a tribute to the lessons learned on that day. Over time, the event came to symbolize not only the resilience of a neighborhood but also the hope that, with empathy and effort, differences could be transformed into assets that enriched society as a whole. And while the journey was not without setbacks or moments of lingering discord, each setback was met with the unwavering resolve of a community striving to prove that love and acceptance could triumph even in the face of deeply ingrained biases. At the heart of this transformation was the simple truth that our shared humanity was far more significant than any superficial attribute. As neighbors greeted one another with smiles and familiar nods, as children of every color played together without fear or hesitation, the spirit of Maple Grove was reborn. It was a rebirth heralded not by grand gestures or sweeping policies, but by the cumulative effect of small, everyday acts of kindness and understanding. And in that quiet, steady transformation, every resident found a part of themselves that had long been hidden behind the masks of prejudice and fear. The journey from division to unity was neither linear nor easy. There were days when old resentments surfaced, when the shadow of the past loomed large, and when the wounds of bias threatened to reopen. But through it all, the community persevered, guided by a resolve that was hard-won and deeply felt. In the gentle camaraderie of long summer evenings and during the reflective quiet of early autumn mornings, every soul in Maple Grove was reminded that the real strength of a community was measured in its willingness to bridge the gaps created by misunderstanding. Years later, when new residents settled into the quiet streets of Maple Grove and listened to the stories of old conflicts and reconciliations, they could see in the eyes of those who had witnessed the transformation a glimmer of hope. At the local library, books and records told of the day when a misunderstanding by the pool turned into an opportunity for lasting change, a day when a community learned that respect is not something that can be imposed from above, but something that must be nurtured in the hearts of its citizens. In the fullness of time, even Karen, whose early actions had caused ripples of discontent, grew to understand that the path to redemption lay in humility and empathy. She often found herself reflecting on that critical day with a mixture of regret and gratitude, a regret for the pain she had caused and gratitude for the chance to learn from the truth that acceptance and respect were the only ways to build a better world. Slowly, she became an unlikely advocate for community dialogue, often sharing her experiences with others in a voice that was now tempered by wisdom and the hard lessons of the past. And so, as the seasons turned and Maple Grove embraced a future rich with diversity and understanding, the memory of that sweltering summer day by the pool became a legend passed down from one generation to the next. It was a legend that spoke of courage, the courage to stand up for one's rights, to challenge unjust authority, and to transform conflict into opportunities for compassion. It was a story of a community that had learned that unity, once achieved through the slow process of change, was worth far more than any other measure of success. In the end, the pool was more than just a place of recreation, it was a living symbol of the community's journey from isolation to acceptance, from division to unity. The water, cool and clear, mirrored not only the faces of those who had come to enjoy its refreshing embrace but also the spirit of a neighborhood that had finally recognized that true authority lies not in rigid control, but in the power of understanding, empathy, and the shared dream of a better tomorrow. As the final embers of a summer sunset faded into night, Maple Grove continued its quiet transformation under the watchful eyes of those who had learned that every person had a right to be heard and to belong. And in that gentle revolution of hearts and minds, the once fierce confrontation by the community pool had blossomed into a legacy that would shape the lives of generations to come, a legacy of inclusion, justice, and the deep understanding that our differences are not what separate us, but what unite us in the beautiful tapestry of life.